For this question, we are required to use the concept of demand and supply analysis to show how the aforementioned events will affect the stated airline industry along with the related markets in terms of its impact on market equilibrium in terms of price and quantity. We must also understand how the relationship of the impact is actually connected through the use of knowledge of the different types of demand. Lastly, we must also examine the extent of change in demand and supply along with the concept of price elasticity of demand and supply to help us to understand and determine the extent of change in price and quantity and the direction of change in price and quantity. Specifically, whether prices or quantity have increased or decreased and the extensiveness of this increase or decrease. For the part of knowledge necessary for this question, we must firstly understand the concept of market equilibrium in terms of price and quantity. Secondly, we must understand how to explain the aforementioned events which will affect the demand and supply of the airline industry, specifically the determinants of demand and supply. Thirdly, we must also understand the various types of demand and supply, for example, complementary demand, competitive demand, derived demand, and also know how to draw the diagrams in terms of the changes in demand and supply, the different graphs of demand and supply. Also, we must understand how to analyze the extent of change in demand and supply. And lastly, the influence of the price elasticity of demand and supply alongside with the determinants of price elasticity of demand and supply. In the introduction, we should firstly set forth to the examiners that we understand the question by firstly stating that the above events would affect changes in demand and supply in the airline industry, which will affect the market equilibrium that sets price and quantity in the airline market. And then we should move on in explaining that the changes in the market equilibrium in the airline industry will once again affect the other related markets in terms of the various types of demand. This includes complementary demand, competitive demand, as well as derived demand. In our main body, we must set the perspectives, and one of the first perspectives is to explain how the above events will affect the market demand and supply for the airline industry, and therefore affect the market price of the airline industry. So for this airline industry, we look at the first two events that happen. The volcanic eruption will firstly contribute to a decrease in demand. On the other hand, the explosion of the BP oil will lead to a decrease in supply. And in this case here, we must understand that the decrease in demand for oil is larger or greater than the decrease in the supply of oil. Now this is due to the decrease of demand being greater as it is based on the whole industry, whereas the decrease in supply is smaller as the cost of oil is only forming a small part of the cost of production among various aspects and components. Next, we will move on to a diagrammatic analysis to enhance our analysis. So we'll explain that the decrease in demand due to the volcanic eruption from D0 to D1 is greater than the decrease in supply due to the explosion of the BP oil from S0 to S1. This will result in an excess supply condition at the prevailing price level P0. Consequently, there will be a decrease in price from P0 to P1 and also a decrease in quantity from Q0 to Q1. Specifically, there's actually a sharp decrease in price that we can analyze because the supply is price inelastic. We'll offer the reasons why supply is price inelastic, and this is because of the lengthy administrative procedures along with the strong competition for flight routes. But however, we must also understand that the extent of decrease in price is actually minimized due to the fact that air flights are actually considered as a normal good, and the proportion of income that is actually spent on this good is large for the average consumers. Having completed the first perspective, let us move on to the second perspective on the related market. Specifically, in the second perspective, we will explain how the changes in the airline market will affect the related demand, like joint demand with industries like hotel. So, for hotel accommodation, we will firstly explain that the demand for air flights and hotel accommodation are complementary to introduce the nature of this kind of demand. Then, therefore, the decrease in the demand for airline travel, as aforementioned, will decrease the demand for hotel accommodation. Moving on diagrammatically, we will say that as seen from Diagram 2, the decrease in the demand for hotel accommodation from D0 to D1 will result in an excess supply condition at the original or prevailing price level P0. Consequently, there will be a decrease in price of hotel accommodation from P0 to P1 and also a decrease in quantity of hotel accommodation from Q0 to Q1. Then we'll move on to the extent of this decrease by specifying that there's actually a sharp decrease in price because supply is price inelastic, offering the reason that there is a limited supply of land to build hotels, which results in supply constraints at least in the short run. For the third perspective, we will explain how the change in the airline industry will affect the other related demand, such as competitive demand with industries like rail transport. So for the rail transport market, we'll firstly introduce the nature of such competitive demand by explaining that the demand for air flight and rail transport are competitive. Now, because rail transport is seen as a substitute for air flight, therefore the increase in the price of air flights will result in consumers to switch from air transport to rail transport. Therefore, this will result in an excess demand condition at the original price, resulting in an increase in the price of rail transport. Diagrammatically, we'll explain as seen from diagram 3, the increase in demand for rail transport from D0 to D1 will result in an excess demand condition at the original price level P0. This will consequently result in an increase in price of rail transport from P0 to P1 and an increase in quantity of rail transport from Q0 to Q1. Specifically, the extent of increase in price is extensive because the supply is price inelastic. Similar to the reason before, this is due to the long duration of planning and administration. Therefore, this results in a limited supply of rail transport, at least in the short run. For our last related market, which is our fourth perspective, we'll explain how the changes in the airline industry will affect other related demand, like derived demand with industries like aircraft manufacturers. So we'll firstly introduce this nature of demand by explaining that the demand for aircraft manufacturing is derived from the demand for air flights. Then we will explain that given the decrease in the demand for air flights, airline carriers will purchase less planes. As a result, the demand for aircraft manufacturing will decrease. This will present an excess supply condition at the original price level. Consequently, there will be a decrease in price and quantity of aircraft manufacturing. Graphically, we'll explain that the decrease in the demand from D0 to D1 for aircraft manufacturing will result in an excess supply condition at the prevailing price level of P0. This will result, consequently, in a decrease in price from P0 to P1, and the decrease in price is sharp because the supply is price inelastic, once again because of the long production period for manufacturing and assembling airplanes. Wrapping up, we will state that the two events will affect the market for air aviation industry and the related markets. We will also explain that understanding the impacts of demand and supply based on concepts of price elasticity of demand and supply will be important in helping us to understand the exact nature of price increase or decrease or quantity increase or decrease.